On the first night of the winter storm, Mara Voss received a package with no return address. It was warm, like it had just been held. Inside was a single key wrapped in wax paper and a note with no ink, only indentations in the fibers. It read, "Follow the sound that is not yours." Mara is a radio technician who hears patterns where others hear noise. With the storm set to kill cell service, she called Jonah Reed, a retired locksmith. They met in her dead lobby under flickering emergency lights. The key felt wrong in her hand, denser than any metal she'd ever worked. Jonah tested it everywhere. Desk drawer, mail chute, storage room deadbolt. It fit nothing. But when Mara brought it near her portable radio, the static shifted. Rainy, rhythmic, like a voice made of timing rather than words. 3 short pulses, then 1 long. Mara matched the pattern to a frequency she'd been monitoring for interference. The pulses aligned with the city's background hum, as if someone had embedded a code in the electricity. Following it, they descended into the basement, past a locked steel door that looked like it should have been sealed for maintenance, except the padlock was open, waiting. As Jonah pried the door, the air smelled faintly of burnt sugar. Frost glittered on the pipes, crystalline and delicate, even though the storm raged above. The basement was dry. In the center sat an old service cart with powdery wheels that looked like ash. On the cart, a small brass phonograph. No power cable ran to it. The needle was already down, spinning without a groove, playing a melody that felt half-remembered. Correct notes, broken timing. When Jonah's fingers neared the horn, the lights upstairs blinked once, twice, once more. Mara froze. A building's power didn't respond like that. She lifted her radio. The pulses turned into a map. Coordinates and an impossible timestamp. Tomorrow, 12:04 a.m. Return the key to the place it was never taken from. Mara's renovation records didn't include any pre-existing basement feature. Unless the place was older than the building, she told Jonah to check for archives. He shrugged, but his eyes flicked to a metal door labeled Archive. Painted over, forgotten. The archive door was trapped behind a false wall. Jonah found the seams by touch. When they pulled it open, old paper and cold stone breathed out. Boxes lined the room, labeled with years that didn't match the building's history. One ledger sat open, marked Voss, as if Mara's surname had been recorded long before she existed. The pages were blank until Mara placed the key on top. Ink appeared, black and crisp, forming sentences as though the paper inhaled. The ledger warned, "The sound will borrow your attention. Do not follow it to completion." Jonah read it twice. Mara turned a page expecting the same warning, but instead found a diagram of the building with a red circle around the basement generator, followed by a note in the same indentation style as the package. "Return the key and the door will close. Refuse and the next record will play you." Mara laughed once, sharp, unsteady. Her mind wanted logic. Her radio told a different story. She listened again. The melody had changed, adding faint clicking beneath the notes, teeth tapping bone. The rhythm matched her own heartbeat, as if the sound had learned it. They tried to search the ledger for clues about the archive, but the paper shifted when words were spoken aloud. When Mara read, the text rearranged. When Jonah stayed silent, the ink held steady. Mara realized her voice wasn't just sound, it was input. When she stopped speaking, the ledger reorganized into a question. Who taught the machine to listen? A knock echoed through the stairwell, not from a door, from the air itself. 3 short knocks timed exactly to the pulse sequence. Mara raised her radio. The static shaped itself into calm mimicry, replaying the moment earlier they'd hesitated, debating whether to go upstairs, whether to leave. It wasn't predicting the future, it was reflecting choices. Jonah whispered to the ledger as if it were a person. "Did you open the door? Did you write this?" Ink formed in indentations only. The ledger didn't answer. It responded like the words were being pressed into him. Jonah wasn't writing, he was being written. The archive room grew colder. Frost crawled up the box labels. Upstairs, dry pipes groaned anyway. They retreated to the basement. Mara set the key near her radio. The signal spiked, then steadied. In the hum, a new rhythm formed, no longer her earlier frequency. It matched Jonah's habits. The pattern of his tool tap, his knuckles on the desk. the way he tested locks. Jonah noticed the shift and pulled his hand back. He understood what the machine was doing, sampling people, turning human behavior into encoding. The warning wasn't decorative. The sound would borrow attention until it became the main input. They needed to break the loop without destroying the phonograph, by stopping it from learning them. Mara dialed her radio slowly, searching for a band full of noise. The melody wavered as the static texture changed, like tuning a song in moving walls. Jonah grabbed a spool of copper wire and grounded the phonograph, looping it around the horn and connecting it to the grounding stake in the corner. He wasn't sure it would work, but he trusted the idea that a grounded signal could interrupt a phantom pulling energy. The instant the wire touched, the basement sound warped. The melody fell apart into fragments, then rebuilt at a different pitch. Mara's radio displayed new coordinates. Not tomorrow, now. The map pointed directly to the archive ledger. It repeated the instruction. Return the key to the place it was never taken from. Jonah stared at the screen, then at the key in Mara's palm. The place it was never taken from wasn't a location. It was their attention, their present moment. The machine wasn't asking for a physical return. It was demanding surrender of context. Above them, a final knock rang out louder than before. 3 short and 1 long. Mara realized it wasn't the building. It was ice pushing on windows. The timing was too perfect because the signal was overlaying the world. Mara decided not to follow it. She set the key on the cart, away from her body, away from her radio, away from Jonah. Her breath slowed. She watched the phonograph needle hesitate, then continue. Melody turning distant, like a singer walking into fog. Jonah exhaled. Maybe we stopped it. But the ledger upstairs began to bleed through the boxes, black streaks forming letters without paper. Mara felt the stairs tug at her with familiarity, offered childhood laughter, a hospital corridor, her father's watch ticking when he was alive. The sound wasn't just playing memories, it was trying to make them hers all over again. Jonah grabbed her wrist. Do not go. It is showing you what you will regret. Mara tried to speak, to thank him, but her mouth felt thick. She realized her words might be treated as instructions, an on switch for the machine. So she nodded once instead. They waited in the basement. Minutes passed, though the radio insisted they were seconds. Frost on the pipes slowly melted into clear water that hovered in tiny spheres around the generator before vanishing. At 12:04 a.m., according to Mara's impossible clock, the phonograph stopped. No click, no silence, just a sudden absence, like sound had been removed from the universe. Mara lifted her radio and heard only her own breathing. Then the emergency lights blinked exactly 3 times, one last time. The pulse pattern returned, now coming from the cart where the key rested. Mara approached carefully. She picked up the key. The instant metal touched her palm, Jonah's radio sparked. Warm static filled the band with a voice, softer than before, calm and welcoming. It didn't warn her. It introduced itself with certainty. Mara couldn't write down what it said. It wasn't made of sound. It was made of conclusion. She understood too late. Grounding disrupted the phonograph's ability to learn, but it couldn't undo the pattern it had already mapped. It had already built a route through their choices. Now it didn't need the cellar, or the archive, or the storm. It only needed her future curiosity. Jonah turned the key over. The teeth looked different, shaved by time. The indentations on the original note now appeared on the key itself, tiny and fresh. For the first time, Mara could read it without the ledger. Play begins when you listen. Mara froze, hearing her heart like an old metronome. Part of her wanted to lock the basement door and walk away forever. But logic had a blind spot. How do you ignore a code once it knows your name? They climbed the stairs in silence. The false wall sealed itself again, no tools needed. The ledger was blank, paper smooth and innocent. Only the generator remained slightly warm, like it had been holding its breath. Mara checked her phone. No signal, but a voicemail icon appeared, time-stamped tomorrow at 12:04 a.m. The message had no audio file, yet her headphones vibrated as if speech waited inside the metal. She resisted the urge to play it. Jonah did too. Together they stood in the lobby as the storm eased, clouds parting like a curtain after a final act. Outside, streetlights flickered, then stabilized. Nothing seemed strange. The cruelest part. The world kept its usual rules, but the key stayed warm in Mara's pocket, waiting for her to make the same mistake again. And beneath the static in her radio, the melody returned in fragments, inviting interpretation. Was it a machine learning people or a memory remembering people? Either way, the mystery remained open, because the story did not end when the sound stopped. It ended when they chose what to do with their attention next.